Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about the models of disability. First, we're going to start with a definition of what a model is exactly. A model is a system that is used as an example to follow or to imitate, a simplified description of a system or a process to assist calculations or predictions. So, if the perspective from which we see a problem determines what we do to solve it, then the model is a simplified description of this perspective, of how we will approach a problem. And this is something that we are going to reiterate and remember as we talk about the models of disability and as we use them. So the models of disabilities are diverse perspectives from which this phenomenon, this situation of disabilities is perceived, embraced, analyzed, and understood. It is a belief system that portrays disability in different ways, in specific ways, and they serve as a guide on how it can be dealt with in society. These are tools for defining impairment and devising strategies for truly solving problems and meeting the needs of disabled people. In other words, models of disabilities are these tools that we're gonna use and that will provide the information, the insight, and how we think about a certain situation that people with disability have, and how we will devise these strategies to approach them. It will provide us an insight into the attitudes, conceptions, and prejudice on the former and how they impact on the latter. And they help us reveal the ways in which society provides or limits access to work, goods, and services, economic influences, as well as political power for people with disabilities. So, in other words, the model of disability that we use to analyze a problem or a situation will define the type of solutions we create. This is why models are so important. If we want to get holistic solutions, we must first consider different models, different approaches, and different perspectives around the same issue. There are multiple models of disabilities that throughout time different experts have defined. In this video and in this class, we're going to talk about only these six models: religious, medical model, social, charity, economic, and social adapted. All of these models usually tend to approach or follow two fundamental philosophies. The religious, medical, and charity model follow the philosophy of disabled people as dependent upon society, whereas the other models see disabled people as customers of society, what society has to offer. And this guides a lot both on the understanding of what the disability is and where the problem eradicates and how the solution is going to be approached. So we're going to take us a quick look on each of these models. First of all, the religious model, or also called the moral model. This one views disability as a punishment inflicted upon the individual or a family by an external force. It can be caused by misdemeanors or bad behavior from the disabled person or the people surrounding them, and it comes related to evil spirits or spiritual rewards. So it is a lot related to the belief system that people have. So the individual is seen as a lost soul that needs to be made good again. Therefore, the solution for this is conversion through exorcisms, death, rehabilitation, religious act, etc. The medical model, on the other hand, sees individuals as the impairment. They are the result from a physical or mental limitation and is largely unconnected to the social or geographic environment. It is mostly based, or the thought comes related to a biological inferiority model or a functional limitation model. It doesn't acknowledge the role of society, it only focuses on the physical impairments, sensory impairments, the illness, the attitudes related to it. So, therefore, the solution is related only to treatment and care because the individual is a patient that needs to be cured again, that needs to be made normal again. And this is also a model where people are seen as dependent on society. The charity model is also known as the tragedy model. It depicts disabled people as victims of the circumstances and they deserve our empathy, our pity, and our help. So the problem relies on and inherited by the victim. It is not their fault. They need our help, their sympathy, they need special service, and they need to be looked after us, the able body. So the individual is a victim that needs to be saved. So the solution is to care for them, to make charity events, to do things for them, to sometimes institutionalize them, etc. This is the most commonly model used by non-disabled people, those who can use all of their abilities and their functions. And this agrees to some extent with the medical model because the person is not at fault, but this situation comes to them. So because of this, we need to do things for them and we need to help them in every case. This has been used to do fundraising and to raise concern and to raise awareness of different situations, of different diseases, and the disabled are recipients of these charity activities. It is very important to understand that this is not a criticism for those who make a lot of charitable donations, organizations for people with different disabilities and different impairments. They do a very important and very needed help. But this model, the important thing is to understand that this model is only limited to this and not full integration. Then we have the economic model, or also known as the productivity model. In this case, the problem is not so much of the individual itself, but the underproduction that they come with. It is centered on the economic analysis and the economic impact of people with impairment within society and within employment and within the operations of a company. So a person with disability is defined by as a person who has limitations to work. So the problem is related to less productivity, less income, limitations at doing different tasks. They require some accommodations, they require more training and potential losses. And the solution within the view of this model is a subsidy because the individual is a cost that needs to be avoided or that needs to be subsidized. And this can be by government input, legislation, lower wages, company social responsibility, or just giving them inconsequential tasks. So within this model, people with disabilities, depending on how it is approached and how it is used to find solutions, they can be seen as dependent on society or customers of what society has to offer. So this model is used to understand, justify, and support in purely economic terms. It does not include approaches related to medical, to society, to religious. It's only about what is efficient and about the cost that it comes with. There's a few data. In Ecuador, 25% of people have some level of disability. 80% of them are in a productive and labor age. Only 19% of them actually have a job. And all around the world, people with disabilities tend to have a harder time to find a job. And companies see these direct costs associated with disabilities with compensation, medical costs, training costs, loss in morale, and earning potential. So these are the reasons why they think twice before hiring them. But if the annual earnings of people with disabilities are much less and the possibility of finding a good job are much less, the issue here is how could they support themselves? How can they be independent if their cost of living, of medical solutions, of medicine, rehabilitations, etc., could be higher than those without these limitations? So this is why different approaches and different solutions related to subsidize or the different laws that oblige companies to hire them. That's how they come here. So these are two different approaches that companies tend to have and that the society and government tend to have. One way is paying the disabled employee for the loss of earnings, which come with a stigma for this person by underlying their inability to match the performance of their work colleagues. On the other hand, we have this situation where where the government pays the employer for the loss of productivity that they're going to have. The issue here that it can be difficult to make a guidance to understand and see how people are using this in the correct way and in the correct level of subsidy so that it is not used wrongly. So which of these two solutions should be the ones that we use? That is the dilemma. How can we achieve an equitable, effective, value for money distribution of disability related benefits? How do we find a strategy that is economically viable and socially acceptable? Because companies have been criticized for seeing people only as numbers in productivity base, but the reason for company, their essence, is to be as economically efficient as possible. So here we have a conflict of interest. Now we have the social model, which is also called the minority model. In this case, we have the problem of society excluding people. This was inspired by the activism of the British disability movement in the 1960s, and then in the 70s, the social model of disability development developed in reaction to the limitations of the medical models of disability. Here, the notion of disability and the understanding of it changes as a socially constructed phenomenon. So the problem does not rely on the people, on those who have these limitations, but it comes from society and how it is excluded. The physical barriers, lack of access, discrimination, restrictions of activities. So here, the individual is, is someone that has been excluded, and society needs to adapt itself, needs to be adapted so that it is easy for everyone to use, so that spaces are accessible, so that it is more usable, ergonomics, and so that it helps people with different disabilities be able to be autonomous, be independent. So here, people with disabilities are customers of what society has to offer. So they can decide, they have a vote in this, and society has to be adapted into their needs and their requirements. So here the solution relies in social management by all the necessary environmental modifications. This model does not acknowledge medical impact, only aspects related to society, the behavior of people, and how the environment has been designed and has been constructed. In other words, the social model does not see disability as a person's condition, but as a result of the environment, as one person's inability to interact with the surroundings. This model has also been criticized as not being enough because it only takes into consideration the environment and the attitudes of people. It does not acknowledge the medical aspects of a condition that someone has. This is how a new model came to be, the social adapted model. This one combines aspects of medical model and social model. So yes, so the problem is related both to society and the impairment itself. The physical barriers, the restriction of activities, the attitude of people, but also in the actual chronic illness and the actual impairments, physical or sensories that people have. And the solution is a combination of the adaptation of society, the environments, the building, and also treatment and care and rehabilitation in 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 the work of medical professionals, social workers to work together. So these are just 6 examples of different models of disabilities that we can find. In different literatures, we can find other models that incorporate different points of view of what is disability, what is the problem, what are the roots, where do they come from, and what are the solutions that should be applied to address this. It is very important to remember that none of these medical models is either good or bad. None of them is better than the other, and there's no priority. These are just different points of view that the users may have, the change makers have, the decision makers have, and people around them. This is about having different approaches and different ways to analyze a problem, the situation, and the attitude and behavior of people for us to define what type of solutions we create. So, if we want to get holistic solutions, we must consider different models. For each situation, each project that we work on, it is very important to understand and to figure out which models can we use in a combination to understand these different perspectives and to find different solutions that are actually combine all of the things that people need.